we're from the company CoinEd. CoinEd is our education brand behind all the businesses that we do. And we specifically deal with cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology. Where we have found quite a niche in the market right now is dealing with school level. And the reason we believe in what we're doing is because everyone building these technologies or building on top of blockchain technology right now is simply experimenting with the concept. And just like with the internet in the 90s, it was the generations coming out of school during the 90s that actually created the businesses, the billion-dollar businesses. So we have the same mindset that the real true adopters of this technology is going to be the kids that are in school right now, will be walking out of school in 5 years' time, for example.
Yeah, so what we found is that we were pitching quite a few different businesses in the crypto space. Some of them were things like index funds and mining ventures. And whenever we went to speak to someone about it, they usually required quite a bit of education just to get up to speed, because you know it is, they weren't necessarily that well informed. There was possibly some bad press about Bitcoin, and they were struggling to sort of differentiate the facts from the reality. And we found that there was just quite a lot of education and onboarding needed to get everyone we spoke to up to speed. So much so that they actually started to request us to do training for them to get everyone on board. So we started to do that, but obviously with the cycles of the market, what we found is that when you do have these boom and bust cycles, which you've seen 4 or 5 times in Bitcoin, the corporate sector gets very interested when there's a lot of money and hype and media going into the space. And then when that drops off, the interest drops off a bit. So we wanted something that was more consistent, people that were genuinely more interested in the technology and the opportunities. And so we actually found that in 2 places. The first one was at school level, which, as Kreaan mentioned, is a really good place to be for the long term, teaching people about the tech. We're actually going to be able to use this platform. And then also within the development community, so looking at training devs for them to go from the languages that they're used to, JavaScript, Python, etc., and moving them onto more blockchain-focused development thinking and skill sets.
It was actually interesting because exactly why we created CoinEd was our initial dealing with Crawford. So we were looking at the various technologies that we could implement in school level, and it seemed like a far stretch at the time because of the lack of knowledge of cryptocurrencies within the corporate environment. So because Crawford College or Crawford International, is a school brand, their business is teaching. We felt that it was a natural fit based on all the experiences that we had with the corporates already. And it evolved into this beast that is growing beyond our wildest dreams right now. It's spreading beyond just Crawford International. We're dealing with Crawford South Africa. It's been an incredible journey with Crawford, actually. So our long-term vision definitely is to expand into other international schools, but we believe that we have a good relationship with Crawford International. We are promoting each other's brands very well, and it is the first time that we are venturing outside of South Africa. So to have that corporate backing behind you is obviously an incredible feat.
I also think that the longer term goal is to be able to scale the content. So we're really doing it ourselves now as the founders to gauge the reaction, see how children of different ages react to learning about blockchain and crypto. And it's quite interesting seeing how they react to that versus your sort of conventional finance system at this age. And the idea is to take all of those learnings and then eventually be able to package it into content that scales. So sort of a train the trainer model and digital content.
And also we truly believe that this is an African first. So I mean, we welcome the challenge. If anyone has done it before us, we're proud of that, and they're welcome to come tell us, and we'll relinquish the title gladly. But we do believe we're pioneering in something here. And it takes a lot of guts to be able to do that, and especially to try and find out what kids do react to versus what we are known to provide to adults, for example.
Well, I think something that I always believe is that fortunes are built in the downturn and realized in the upturn. And obviously during the bull market, everyone's thinking, oh, if only I'd gotten involved a while ago. But then they don't realize that a while ago was essentially some kind of crypto winter, whether it was the 2014, 2015 cycle or what it is today. So I think what we try and identify are opportunities. So there are certain kinds of things that aren't going to be very lucrative. I think a lot of the scams and less viable business models get washed out in these recessionary periods. It's almost the best time to test your market. And one example is mining. A lot of people got into mining at the peak of the bull run. Now that's not the time to start a mine, whether it's a gold mine or a Bitcoin mine. So we're looking at actually scaling up our mining operation now, because if it makes sense now, it'll definitely make sense in a more bullish market. As I alluded to earlier, the corporates are less likely to engage with cryptocurrency at the moment. But for us, we know that there will come a time when their interest has peaked again, and we need to be ready for that. So the idea is to really build things that we can take advantage of when the cycles are returning into a more bullish sort of sentiment.
So we started the conversation with the grade 7s, 8s and 9s today, and we asked the questions: who's heard of cryptocurrencies, who's heard of Bitcoin, whose parents own Bitcoin. And we were amazed that some of the kids actually said, yes, we know what this is. Our parents do use it. One person even said their parents uses cryptocurrency for international remittances. So it was amazing to see that level of understanding already existed in a grade 7's mind. And what we found was, when we did start, or rather let me take a step back and say, today we simply talked about the history of money and the problems of money as we know it. And we will build onto what that means going forward with cryptocurrencies. And it's amazing to see how quickly children grasp the concept and actually relate their own experiences in life to what we're talking about. And we can clearly see that their minds are thinking, understanding how this could actually impact their lives going forward into the future.
Yeah, so we obviously start with a bit of background, because it's important to understand a bit of financial history, which children don't necessarily start with. But then our goal is, specifically because of the age group that we're teaching, is to make things as hands-on as possible. You can't just stand up here and lecture about the white paper and the predecessors' attempts to create decentralized money. So we've tried as far as possible for every single thing to make it as interactive as possible. So for example, when we speak about blockchains and mining, the students actually physically build their own blockchains. So we give them small cards of paper, they take transactions from the mempool. So it's all brought into the physical world, because it's obviously a very virtual concept. So that's the one example. The other one is mining. So both around ASIC and GPU mining, they actually build up a mining rig from scratch. And I think, maybe a generation 10 or 20 years before probably had experience of building PCs. But I think with consumer electronics now being so modular and single use and disposable, the actual components in a computer, a 14-year-old has never really seen a RAM chip or a hard drive or anything like that. So for a lot of them, it's the first time that they really get to look at the components of computers through building a GPU mining rig. And then we also go through demonstrating exactly how to buy Bitcoin, actually using it to buy things online. A lot of them are surprised, we found today, when we say that we in part live off of cryptocurrency, and that you can actually buy things with it. A lot of them are quite surprised as to that. So we also then demonstrate exactly how to track things on the blockchain, block explorers, basically following the whole process through interactive examples.
And also to add to that, because we are doing a 20-hour course, it's not simply talking about cryptocurrencies and blockchains. We have to, and especially because of the age group, we have to delve into game theory, we have to delve into cryptography, computer sciences, socioeconomics, geopolitics, tax, regulation. So we start talking about a lot of the concepts that kids don't necessarily get in the normal schooling system. And it allows them to think outside of the box and also think about the emerging technologies and what that means, not just what it can do. Where we are going now with this is, as I mentioned, a first in Africa, we're effectively integrating into the curriculum of a school. And what Crawford International have done for us is they've shifted the entire school day around and put us in the middle, so that we are integrating into all the subjects that go around it as well. And what we see happening is it will become a yearly subject that we build on every single year as you go from grade 8 to grade 9 to grade 10, etc. And the reason we believe that that is a critical way of doing it is because this industry is evolving so quickly. We don't know what's going to happen in a year's time, but we definitely know that it would have evolved to a point where there's an entirely new 20 hours worth of content that we can present to kids.
Yeah, so I think at the moment we have a view to move it there, but there's a lot of content available already online aimed at that. There's a lot of online courses. And a lot of the universities in South African context actually do already offer cryptocurrency related curricula. So whilst we would like to move to that, I think it is an area that's already being served quite well. So we'd rather focus on what we see as the more important area of high schools and devs.
Looking at the next 2 or 3 years, because of the 27 boom-bust cycle of ICOs and things, we're going to see, in my opinion, a lot of regulators stepping in and tempering the industry, the growth of it, and especially the amount of money or less knowledgeable money coming into the industry. So I think that we're going to see a bit of subdued growth, which honestly is a good thing in my opinion. We don't want millions and millions of dollars being thrown around at projects that fail. And especially because we are dealing with money. Money is not a 1 or 2 year experiment. It is a generational experiment. So the longer it takes, in my opinion, I believe Warren thinks the exact same way, the better.
Yeah, I think I also take a long-term view on it. So I think that the majority of other cryptocurrencies will fall away. I think there's definitely a case to be made that we could end up with a situation of one blockchain-based money and some stable coins. At the moment, it does look like that's going to be Bitcoin. I mean, there's definitely this idea about Bitcoin maximalism. I think maybe it's better just to talk about being a maximalist in general. Like, there will be one thing. It makes sense to have one currency on top of which things are built as a protocol, just like the internet evolved. So where we see ourselves involved in that is we do run a cryptocurrency hub and incubator based in Johannesburg. So we have got some businesses that we'd like to build on top of it, but for the time being, we'd actually like to support others that are trying to build in an industry. So that involves providing training to the developers that are going to build on top of the blockchain, as well as providing support to businesses operating in that space.
So as Warren mentioned, our hub is actually called Block Starters, and we have plans for Block Starters to be one of the key support pillars of the blockchain industry in Africa. It's just because we are South African that obviously it was easy to start it there. We understand the landscape. But we have been approached by many institutions around Africa, specifically in Kenya and Ghana right now. And ultimately it's because universities, schools, etc. are starting to realize that the education system is not what it used to be. It was built for the past, not for the future. So in building education for the future, you also need to create the support structures that support the ideas coming out of those lessons or whatever they are. So Block Starters would like to have an African footprint. As I mentioned, we are looking at it actively. I mean, Bitcoin KE is here to talk to us about it. So hopefully we could actually work together on our greater plans around Africa.
I think it'd be good to see one of two things happening. One is for them to create some kind of token to play around with, perhaps in the school. And I know there's obviously a lot of services online that enable that reasonably quick generation of a token that you can then play around with. But I think it would also be quite interesting because part of what we do is we actually do hand out some cryptocurrency, as rewards for doing certain exercises, getting things right, getting the answers to the hashing problem in our mining exercise. And it'd be interesting to see if we can get them all to get a bit of Bitcoin onto their wallets, onto mobile wallets. Perhaps they even start to use it as a small ecosystem on the premises. Which would be interesting to see if a small economy could spring out of it.
Yeah, I actually like that idea because at the end of the day, we're teaching kids about the problems with centralized money, centralized forms of transfer. And I think, after what we've seen today, we've definitely sparked their interest to looking into opposing mindsets versus the current system. I don't want to say that the schooling system should be scrapped completely. Right. There definitely are lessons in life that come out of the schooling system. Right. But we do need to start integrating lessons that exist outside of the traditional thinking. And especially because when you leave school, you go to varsity. When you leave varsity, you go into the working world, your mindset shifts completely as to how you approach problems. And we should be developing the skill set to solve problems at a very young age, because that's when critical skills are developed in an adult's life.
Yeah, so I think something that I've certainly seen, it's been a global trend probably for the last 100 years, is all these new technology and revolutions happen quicker and quicker and quicker, so we have an acceleration. So I think we're already in a generation where we will probably not do the same thing for our whole life. It's not a case of different jobs, it's a case of actual different industries. So in our case, we're mechanical engineers. We worked in that field for about 7 years, and now we're into something new. I'm seeing that a lot amongst everyone our age that we know, and I think that's going to be even more pronounced in a generation that's now 14 years old. So I think this idea of lifelong learning and retooling is going to be the theme. And I think that's going to mean a move away from certification, where you have a long-term 4-year certification. I think it's less important to see that you've necessarily, have the certificate. So I know that there's like a Bitcoin course online, the Biddle Bootcamp, where they say we don't offer a certification because once you have done this, you'll have your GitHub history and you can show that you have the skills. So that's the first thing, and then also just being able to quickly retool and learn new things to move into a new field, which will be essential just because of all the new technologies around AI and the changing working environment and opportunities that are out there. I think one of the things that we've seen as an opportunity is actually a little bit outside, although related to blockchain and Bitcoin, which is obviously most of your software developers go into the working environment. There's a huge amount of demand for it. So usually the person teaching computer science, it's more of a theoretical approach, and still in the syllabi around the world, I feel like it hasn't changed tremendously from when we did it. It's still looking at like, can you convert to binary and those kind of things. There doesn't seem to be a focus on developer training. And as much as computer science and the theory of it is very important, I think there is an opportunity which can lead into blockchain dev, because it's the building blocks, is potentially running something where we can come in for a similar 2-week period, skill students up specifically in development tools, development environments, building their first programs, the kind of thing that you would do maybe in your first year of university, which is the best time to learn. It's like, learning languages. You should learn when you're 6-7 years old. I think it's exactly the same with computer languages and programming languages. So I think that's one of the opportunities that we're looking at, because that could make a huge difference and provide the building blocks for blockchain devs.
And also in doing so, something that we're trying to promote in CoinEd is entrepreneurship. We are trying to build the minds, or sorry, not build, but rather influence minds to think outside of the box, create businesses, create employment, create technology that we can export to the rest of the world from Africa. So a big aspect about our course in general is think outside the box. Where do you think this can apply to your life? Where do you think it can solve someone else's problems? And we actually talk a lot about how this cryptocurrency blockchain industry is not going to take off in the developed world because there's far less problems to solve there, right? It's going to solve problems here in Africa and South America and Asia, where there are billions of people that need to interact quickly, efficiently, in a trustless environment. That's where this technology is important.
I ran a engineering company for a while, a small engineering company focused on energy and sustainability. I was quite interested in electric cars and solar and all of those things. So did that for about 7 years, and when the sort of Bitcoin opportunity emerged, I exited that business. And built some software packages while I was there that are still in use around the world, which has been quite cool. So yeah, that's sort of my background in entrepreneurship.
Yeah. So I'm a little bit younger than Warren. I worked as an engineer for about 4 years or so, and around 2015 or so, I stepped out into entrepreneurship. And there was an attempt at a blockchain business, but like I said, nobody really understood the technology back then. And that led me to starting with Warren, Tim and Dan, our other two partners in CoinEd and Blockstarters. We started this blockchain hub, this cryptocurrency business, and also, like previously, before all of this, I was simply involved in the industry. Mainly talking to people, consulting wise here and there, trading, things like that. So technically this is one of my first startups, but it's flying. So.